Abbott, founder of Sapiro and creator of the Conversation Operating System. This is the safe place for salespeople to network with their peers and share ideas. I'm also joined by my fellow co-host, Mr.
Adam Gray. Hi, I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I do love these shows. Normally I'm up here on the backdrop, dialing in, but it's lovely to be here in person.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We are joined by my eldest son this morning, Jordan Abbott. Jordan, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So, hello everyone. I am Jordan Abbott, also known as the Sales Poet. I'll give a bit more context as to why that is. So, two of my biggest passions are acting and sales, and I did pursue a career in acting for a little while. Then decided that I should probably join reality, moved into a role in B2B sales. Guess you could say that I've got a bit of an affinity for professions that involve a lot of rejection. Now, fortunately, as a result of meeting Adam, I actually get to combine those two passions throughout some of the content that I create, and tell stories in outside of the box ways that will hopefully resonate with my prospects and wider audience.
Welcome, Jordan. It's great to have you here, and it's great to watch the journey, see you on this journey of combining your creativity with B2B sales. A passion of mine for 20 or 30 years, I think.
No, surely not. Surely not.
So the topic today is the cost of inaction. So if you're wondering what that means, Jordan is going to share a bit more insight as to why he wants to share what the cost of inaction is with our audience.
Yeah, sure. So I think initially it's really important to take a look back at the economy, the impacts that that's having on how our buyers buy, and also the way that we speak to our buyers. So it's doing a bit of research, and Statista found that in 2017, within the SaaS industry, this is, revenue growth was just under 40%, around 38%. Now they're predicting that in 2024, it's going to be at 9%. So we're seeing whether it's stagnating, but there, of course, are far wider forces at play. Now, just so happens that during that period in 2017, what we were seeing to work was that value-led messaging. We can help you increase X by Y. And the reason that it was so impactful is because it was resonating with how our buyers are thinking. Whereas currently it's quite the opposite. A lot of leaders that I speak to aren't planning on growing in 2024. They've moved away from this growth at all costs mindset to a more conservative stance. And I think the reason that buyers aren't using anything that's vendor produced or vendor associated, according to the Trust Radius findings, is because we're still banging that same drum. We can help you increase so much, but it just doesn't align with how our buyers are thinking, the challenges that they're facing, the things that are keeping them up at night.
Yeah.
Well, certainly we're seeing a definite shift in mood, aren't we?
Yeah.
Whereas before it was, charge, and now it's kind of battening down the hatches for a significant storm.
Indeed.
But it is interesting, I think, and it's a really valuable point to raise. Really interesting that there's been a big shift in mindset, but there's been no shift at all in messaging for how we talk to these people, or how we try to talk to these people.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it is, the fact of the matter is we've been slow to react across go-to-market functions. As I mentioned, it was successful. So, marketing produced so much collateral surrounding these uplifts that we can provide, but they're the least used thing by buyers when they're making a purchasing decision. So it is a case of, at one point it would cut through the noise. There was still some distrust, I guess, purely because at the end of the day, we are salespeople. We are quite literally compensated on how many people we can move to that next stage. So we have an ulterior motive. But because it aligned with how buyers were thinking, we need to grow by X in order to maintain our valuation, in order to be able to raise capital to continue on that growth trajectory. Sorry. So these investments that were being made pre-COVID, they sort of became a bit of a necessity in order to maintain growth. So the risk that was associated with making an investment that maybe wasn't going to be successful, or there was a risk associated to it, was far less than the risk of actually falling behind their competitors, not achieving their growth multiple, and therefore not being able to raise the capital to then further sustain that.
So that's a really good story, but why should I listen to you?
Yeah. So if I take a couple of steps back, when I did first join the world of B2B sales, it was rough riding, I think, to say the least, because I was doing everything that I was being told to by different leaders that I'd worked for, hammer the phones, send out more tailored emails, again, associated to that value-led, insight-led messaging.
And this was at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah. So throughout COVID. And I wasn't achieving the results that I wanted to, and I was feeling quite sort of demoralized because I was doing everything that I felt I could. I was trying every LinkedIn hack that I saw, every little tip and trick, and it just wasn't driving me to where I wanted to go. So a couple of things that I changed. Firstly, a human-led approach, right? Trying to spark curiosity and create conversation. And I think just to circle back to the cost of inaction piece, when done well, all you're trying to do is try and get on the same thought wave as your buyers, but then create a conversation. So, this value-led messaging might be, I can help you increase X by 4X, right? It's a statement, it's a pitch, it puts someone into the zone of resistance, particularly given the state of the economy, the state of businesses as well, and the pressure that these leaders are feeling. Whereas the cost of inaction, you're essentially just trying to create a conversation. So do you know how much pipeline you're missing out of because of Z? So it's a lot less confrontational, it's a lot more conversational, and it's essentially earning you the right to potentially further down the line have a conversation about what a potential solution might look like, because you're focusing on a real problem that the prospect is feeling.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like you've combined both the human approach with this type of insight-led approach that is more geared towards highlighting the cost of inaction. So if you do nothing, this is the impact on your business.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, again, leaders are aware that the current state of affairs isn't going to suffice or isn't going to sustain growth. And I think businesses are coming to that realization now. The reason that I think we are being ghosted, we aren't able to cut through the noise, is because quite simply they've heard it all before, have our buyers. So what they're wanting, what they desire, is for someone to actually help them, because they're in trouble. I think people are aware of it. We hear FOMO, fear of messing up, being thrown around. Here, rather than trying to force someone down the rabbit hole, it's actually trying to put your arm around someone and say, look, I understand that this is the state of affairs. The amount of people that I'm speaking to that are feeling similarly, really focusing in on that problem, but being that sort of person that someone can turn to and create that conversation.
So how does one do this? Because I mean, you talk about the fact that leaders are aware that these things need to change, and I don't dispute that that's true. But what we've seen over the last 5 years is that sales leaders and revenue officers have seen that the mechanisms that had previously worked to generate leads and conversations were not working anymore.
Yeah.
So cold outreach, events hugely expensive, email marketing, cold calling, not giving the yield that they once had. And that should have been a red flag that they needed to try something else, but it wasn't. So now, layered on top of that, we've got the fact that the things that we're actually saying are less engaging. Hence, we're driving even lower engagement and lower return.
Yeah.
They still haven't dealt with the first problem. So
Yeah.
why would they deal with the second problem?
Yeah. So I think the second problem perhaps is more pertinent, because the narrative, the story that you're telling, if no one's going to listen, it doesn't matter where you're telling the story, right? If no one's going to listen or engage, then it's irrelevant. In terms of how to start to change the way that we're thinking, I think the easiest, the most straightforward step to take is to leverage all those resources that are available that speak to the uplift, and just start to reverse engineer it. So if your solution can provide an increase of 4 times more booked meetings, or 4 times more qualified pipeline, then rather than leading with that, it could be, okay, do you know how much qualified pipeline you're missing out on? And the sort of polar difference is initially one's a statement, the second is a question. So you're trying to encourage a response initially, but you're also showing that, okay, I'm starting to understand what you're experiencing, but I want to take it one step further, and you're really focusing in on that challenge that's being felt, rather than jumping straight to a solution, which, as we know,
And it makes a lot of sense, especially if the forecast for 2024 is only 9% growth according to Statista.
Yeah.
But I've been privy to many different conversations recently with CROs and CEOs that are saying, well, we're not planning for growth,
Yeah.
or our growth is going to come from our existing customer base. And so, for the most part, sales leaders are responsible for new business as well as, in some cases, existing business. So, how can they, how can they use what you're talking about effectively to open new doors?
Yeah. So, the thing that jumped to mind as you were speaking there was the adoption piece, and I think, by and large, the reason that there's a lack of adoption is potentially because salespeople and the person that's buying a software or service hasn't fully understood the consequences, that cost of inaction. Right. So I think that both net new and driving expansion efforts, by really sort of peeling back the layers of the onion, identifying, okay, what impacts is this inaction going to have on you, your team, the wider teams. It's a mechanism to have those more in-depth conversations, and really get to the root of an issue, so that there's a deeper understanding. And then from there, as you said, you could sort of draw out or start to plan different phases, different things that you can do to deepen levels of adoption, and then drive further value within the client.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the end question to ask is, so if you don't do anything, you're going to continue what you're doing now,
Yeah.
and how's that working for you?
Yeah.
Because, every organisation, 9% as opposed to 40%,
Yeah.
There's a big change here. So, every organisation that I talk to certainly is falling short of its expectations for what it can sell and its revenue, and its profitability, and continuing to do the same things, more of the same things, with the same messaging, through the same channels, to the same people, is only going to lead to more of the reduced expectations that they're currently hitting. So how can they start to think about turning this? Because clearly what we need to do is we need to, sales leaders need to be doing something, actively doing something different if they're expecting to get a different result.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And again, so I think it definitely lies within changing the way that we're thinking initially, trying to change that narrative, that internal narrative. But additionally, taking into consideration the fact that people are driven more to not make a loss rather than to make a gain, and there's some science behind that. So the cumulative prospect theory, founded by Kahneman and Tversky, probably butchered the pronunciation there, but they found that people were twice as likely to avoid a loss rather than make a gain. Yeah. There's a ton of research that's been done, by various universities that's found this to be true. And I think when we think about it, we've likely experienced it as well. So, if someone says to you, pay me $5 or £5, and, in the future, you could make £5,000, that's gambling, or it could be seen as making an investment. Whereas on the other side of things, pay me $5 and in the future I could prevent you from losing £5,000. That's insurance, and the majority of people have insurance. So I think ensuring that we are aligning to that type of thinking. So the second, the insurance piece, that's aligned more closely to the cost of inaction and that type of messaging, whereas the pay me $5 and make 5,000, potentially make 5,000, that's that ROI led messaging.
Yeah, and this idea of cost of inaction as a concept, let's say, you've been using successfully in your previous role, which, as you shared before we went on air, led you to 116%. One of the things that helped lead you to 116% of your number, which is great. Yeah. But equally, I think this concept, this idea of cost of inaction can be used with current pipeline, in terms of moving it forwards through the process, as well as helping to close out deals where perhaps buyers are struggling to build consensus with their peers effectively.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So the way that I was using it, I was in a sales development role, and it was very much using that as a conversation starter, a way to buy myself the chance to actually have a more in-depth conversation. But additionally, if salespeople can start to identify those points throughout the sales process where the buyer is experiencing FOMO, they're experiencing that fear of messing up, and perhaps that's causing them
FOFO, as you said.
Or FOFO.
Much more the sales narrative.
Indeed. If they can start to identify those points where, perhaps the buyer is experiencing that or moving into that zone of resistance, they're fearing messing up, and then it's something that you can circle back to. Yeah. It's that good shared value.
So here's an interesting thing. So we've had loads of comments. So good morning, everybody that has said good morning. We have a comment from Neil Johnson. So don't worry about your security settings. I was able to find who you are. And he says that he's just reading The Jolt Effect by Matthew and Ted at the moment. Has a lot of suggestions about how people can do this differently. Okay. And I think that the challenge for most salespeople and most organizations is that insights in these areas are not hard to find. Loads of people do loads of research. Andy Huff, who normally would be sitting here, is currently doing research on exactly this kind of thing. Yep. What's working in sales and what isn't, and how the sales environment is changing. So most people are aware of this. The challenge is that most people don't take action and behave differently. So they default back to the things that they did before because there's comfort in those. Even if those things are leading to a place that they know, which is zero results, they're still quite happy doing those things. So I guess because you've been very much at the sharp end of this, what are the things that I, as a salesperson, can do differently tomorrow to what I did yesterday that are likely to drive some of these conversations? Because the kind of the abstract ideas about, well, we need to have more aligned messaging, what does that look like?
Yeah. Okay, it's a tough one. I think really it boils down to, I think it boils down to the individual. I pride myself on my ability to test different ideas and consistently optimize my approach. And it's a really tough one given the state of affairs where people are scared of making mistakes, the salesperson themselves, because of the pressure that's being put on them by organizations. So it can feel like walking a bit of a tightrope sometimes. But I think if we know that the data is telling us that this isn't working, what's the harm in trying something else? But what's the saying? Fail fast, learn faster. Something along the lines of that. And it's not necessarily failing if you're getting 0 responses.
Yeah,
how much worse you get?
Yeah, what have you got to lose?
Yeah.
And I think that's really, excuse me, that's really interesting. And you're a fantastic case study of this. So you're working at an organisation. They're setting you a series of KPIs to do more of this and more of this and more of this. You're the top performing salesperson. You're not doing those things, and yet you're being told off for not doing those things, rather than them taking a step back and saying, well, he's not doing those things, but he's the top performer. So what is he doing that everyone else can copy?
Yeah.
And it's like you're finding the dumbest person in the room and copying their homework, isn't it, almost?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think another consideration here is the importance of data to back up.
So knowledge rather than opinion.
Yeah, exactly. So I, thanks to the influence of Alex, I report religiously on these tests that I run, purely so it's not a case of I'm saying this is the way it is. There is the numbers to back it up, and it makes those conversations, those internal conversations, a lot easier to navigate. Again, because it's something that I can turn back to and have confidence in.
You weren't relying on what the business was reporting on. You were relying on what you were reporting on.
Yeah, indeed. Those trying to identify what are those lead measures that are going to have the highest impact on getting to the next step, whatever that may be for the different sales roles that there are. It's really about sort of nailing those, and then it provides you the story that you can tell internally when a test doesn't work, but equally when a test does work.
Yeah. What are some of the things that inspire you to try these new things?
Yeah, okay. Haven't thought about that too much. I think that it sort of goes back to the reason that I was so attracted to acting as a profession and equally sales. One of the things that I love the most about those two things is the connection to others. I don't want to be spamming people. I don't want to be making a load of noise in people's inboxes. The thing that I get off on is having those connections with people and going on that journey with people. So I think that's what drives me, because I don't want to just be doing activities for activity's sake. I want to be driving forward. And as well, I take pride in sort of identifying those links between things, and it's a hypothesis in my mind. Okay, let's actually test it out and see if it works.
I think what you're saying there, what I'm hearing is you want to feel a sense of purpose in what you're doing.
And also to innovate. Try something new. Be the first person to try it rather than the last.
Yeah. Indeed, and I'm sure there are other people that have been trying this as well. But yeah, equally, it is that sense of purpose and just trying to do something different that's going to set me apart. As you said, that sort of innovative approach.
Brilliant. And I should clarify, it's not just the cost of inaction insight that you rely on. It's that blend of insight and a human-led approach. Well, I think we're coming to time now. Thank you to our audience for all of the comments. We love the comments. It's what makes the show. Thank you to my co-host Adam Gray.
Thank you.
Lovely sitting next to you on the sofa for For the first time, we were all in the studio, and thank you to Jordan. And I wish you the best of luck in securing the next step in your career, because it's worth noting that you are on the market for a new adventure.
Indeed, a cheeky plug there at the end. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
But as a final note, I would like to say, this is unscripted, I would like to say you are the best young salesperson I have ever had the privilege to work with. So exceptional individual.
Thank you. That's
Brilliant.
a real honour.
Yeah. Cool. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your week, folks. Take care.
Thank you.